Hello and welcome to season 5, episode 10 of Conservation Conversations with BirdLife South Africa. I'm your host, Christina Hagen, coming to you live from Cape Town. We have over 150 episodes recorded and available on YouTube, so if you miss out because of load shedding or your Tuesday nights have become busy, never fear, you can always catch up later. We are on all major social media channels, and you can use the hashtag Conservation Conversations to let us know what you think of the show. We aim to keep these webinars free for all to learn and enjoy, so if you do enjoy the series and can contribute, no matter how small an amount, please do consider donating. We have moved away from Quicket as our donation platform, so you can now donate directly through the BirdLife South Africa webpage at the link on the screen, or you can scan the QR code to take you directly there. Otherwise, you can EFT BirdLife South Africa directly and use the reference webinars and your name. And we're so grateful to those of you who do continue to support us. Speaking of which, we are again running the donation competition with the amazing ultimate companion to birding in Southern Africa as a prize. And we are very, very grateful to Peter and Irene Ginn for donating these fabulous books as prizes. If you donate at least 100 Rand, you'll be entered into the draw for one of these books, and each multiple of 100 Rand that you donate gets you another entry. And we are running this for the whole of the rest of May and June and July. But one thing I have neglected to mention in previous advertisements of this donation competition is that this prize is for South Africans only due to the cost of shipping internationally. Having said that, if anyone from overseas has donated and wins the draw, then we will honor that commitment. But just please note from now, the prize will only be for South Africans, unless people have donated before this date. So apologies for not making that clear from the outset. But now on to the talk this evening. We are heading off to West Africa with Richard Dixon, who is from our partner in the UK, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. So Richard has 30 years of experience in development and conservation programs in Africa. He joined the RSPB 6 years ago to work on the Greater Gola Landscape Program in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And he joins us now from Liberia. So we are a bit worried about the internet connection, so I will be sharing his presentation for him, and but he will obviously be speaking. So Richard, let me just get your presentation up, and you are welcome to get started once. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
So I can start. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this talk. I'm going to talk about the Greater Gola landscape. As Christina said, my name is Richard Dixon, and I'm the head of the Greater Gola landscape. Next slide. So the idea, this is the Greater Gola landscape. As you see in the top left-hand corner, it's right on the border of Sierra Leone and Liberia. And we're trying to protect some of the best Upper Ghanaian rainforest habitat left in West Africa, with a total of about 350,000 hectares. There's significant populations of threatened species. Among them are forest elephants, chimpanzees, pygmy hippos, Diana monkeys, white and black-bellied pangolin, and the iconic white-necked Picathartes. The area is also home to a large rural population who live in the fringes of the park and are among some of the most economically deprived communities in West Africa. So as you see here, there's two pieces that are surrounded by red. That's on the Liberian side, that's the Gola Forest National Park, which is about 80,000 hectares. And on the Sierra Leone side, the piece that's in red is the Gola Rainforest National Park, which is about 70,000 hectares. Around the Gola Rainforest National Park in Sierra Leone, there's that shaded area which is about a 4-kilometer leakage belt, which is where we spend most of our time working with the forest edge communities. On the Liberian side, there's 2 proposed protected areas. These are in purple. One is called Foya, which has got a number 5 in it. And that's about 100,000 hectares at the moment. It's actually gone down because of encroachment, but we're trying to get that gazetted right now. And then the other purple area is PO, KPO. And we're also trying to get that gazetted. There's pieces that you can't see is Kambui Hills, which is near the main center town in Sierra Leone. And around the forest in Liberia are community forests, which we're trying to, work with to connect the Gola Forest National Park to Foya and across the border to Gola Rainforest National Park. So next slide. So I was mainly going to talk about the REDD project. So that's in Sierra Leone. So the Reducing Emissions from Tropical Deforestation and Degradation, REDD Plus project. The project began in 2012, just after the gazettement of the Gola Rainforest National Park, which I just pointed out on the map. And it was a project that runs for 30 years. So we've got about 18 years left of this project. It's a partnership between governments, civil society, and communities working together. The main objectives are to protect Gola forest and its biodiversity, deliver community engagement and benefits to help protect the forest for 122 forest edge communities, and deliver sustainable finance through the sale of carbon credits. Next slide. So what happened we started the project, and then we developed this Gola Rainforest Conservation Limited Company. And this was a partnership between RSPB, and the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, and the BirdLife partner, the Conservation Society of Sierra Leone. So it's a not-for-profit company registered in Sierra Leone, and its mandate is to manage the project and the revenues on behalf of all the partners. We did a number of agreements to form this company, the main one being the joint venture agreement, which I'll mention later, with Ministry giving GRC, the Gola Rainforest Conservation Company, authority to manage Gola and generate and share revenues. So GRC employs over 160 staff to do these activities in the forest edge communities and in the protected area. And although these are the members that I mentioned, on the board, there's an additional, there's RSPB, there's the Conservation Society of Sierra Leone, there's the Forestry Division, the National Protected Area Authority, and also a paramount chief. So it's a representative from the 7 chiefdoms that surround the Gola Rainforest National Park. So they have a committee and they select a paramount chief to be on the GRC board of directors. So they're part of, so that the people have a say in the decision-making of the project. It's divided into a number of different departments, GRC management. There's the head of Gola, and then the departments are the park operations, which is about 55 park rangers who patrol the forest. Community development department, which looks after the benefit sharing agreements. There's the conservation enterprise department, which is looking at income generating activities such as cocoa, ecotourism, and honey production, something that people can sell and make an income. Then there's the research and monitoring department, and admin and finance. For our part, RSPB, no cost to the project, to the program, we have a number of technical advisors for research, for business development, for management, and for wildlife crime, land use planning, and sustainable finance. So there's a number of support people in country that assist basically the GRC in Sierra Leone, but also the BirdLife partner in Liberia. Next slide. So this reducing emissions from tropical deforestation degradation, REDD. How does it work? Gola is an avoided emissions carbon project generating tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. It follows the voluntary REDD standards offered by Vera, that's based in USA. The standards used are Verified Carbon Standard, VCSs, and Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standards, CCB. At the moment, we have, with the CCB, you can get to a standard of triple gold. At the moment, we're on double gold because we haven't quite achieved what we wanted to achieve within the communities, mainly around targeting vulnerable people. We haven't quite got that correct yet. The credits are generated ex post, so that means after you have done the work, so that it can be verified independently through an audit after you've completed all of the work. Measuring, reporting, and verification is a very important aspect of the Vera and the carbon standards. So there's quite rigorous monitoring that we have to do throughout the life of the project to enable us to report back to Vera and pass the audit and get the issuance of the credits. Next slide. So I just want to give you a summary of the carbon income. As I said, the project started in 2012, and it took a while to do the first verification, and 1 million credits were verified. So we had a million carbon credits to sell. Unfortunately, at the very beginning, the price was very low. So then the program was actually subsidized through RSPB. So we invested a lot of money in this program at the beginning because of the low price of carbon credits. And credits, all of those credits were sold through a broker called Climate Care, and from 17 to 21. And this generated about 40%, about $2.2 million, which is about 40% of the annual GRC operational budget. Now there's very positive movements in the market, and the trends for last year has seen growth in credit value. So we're actually it's looking much better now in the voluntary market. And so we did a second carbon verification audit, and that was completed in December last year, which generated 1.6 million carbon credits, VCUs, for the period between 2012 and 2018. So you get these credits that are issued for each of the years that you are trying to verify. So there's a number for 2015, 16, 17, and 18, and so we're only up to 2018, and we sold all of those credits, and the income is around about $10 million, which was covering the past 4 years of GRC operational budget, and it will cover the next 2 years. The costs of all of the net income is transferred to GRC. So all of the money then goes out to Sierra Leone and is put in a bank account there to be used for the annual operational budget. Next slide. So can you play the video? So it's en route to achieving financial self-sufficiency. And as I mentioned before, there was a joint venture agreement. So once you once you've generated that money and it's covering the operational budget of the Gola Rainforest Company, then the surplus is then used for in the following way, as stated in the joint venture agreement. So the surplus is put into the Conservation Trust Fund, which is a trust fund in Sierra Leone, managed by the National Protected Area Authority. It uses it to help them manage other protected areas within Sierra Leone. Some of the money then goes into, so that's 50% of the surplus goes into the Conservation Trust Fund. 40% of the surplus goes into the International Eco Fund, which is an endowment fund, which is to grow the money for a rainy day. So when the project ends, there'll still be some funding in this endowment fund to cover the program activities. And 10% goes into civil society capacity building. We are now working with another carbon broker called Respira, and we're presently undergoing another verification to cover the years from 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. So then we get caught up, and then we do a verification audit every year. I'm sorry if this is a bit too detailed, but I just needed to explain that. So next slide. So this is for birders, this is a Western bluebill. And I wanted to talk a bit about the park management. Next slide. So these are the park rangers. As I said before, there's 55. And we actually have run a number of training operations in the forest for these rangers, plus rangers that have come over from the Gola Forest National Park in Liberia. So we're trying to set up a center of excellence for park ranger training. So it really is quite a very high quality training. Some of it from the actual British Army that was supporting the Sierra Leone government, but also we've reached out to park rangers from South Africa actually that came up last year and gave a number of trainings for these rangers. So the training, they carry obviously they carry a lot of equipment. So they sleep in the forest. They go on patrols every 2 weeks. They swap out and then on groups of 5. So the patrol in groups of 5, and they sort of are looking for illegal activity. They don't carry guns, but if they do find some illegal activity, then they can report back to the Sierra Leone military or the Sierra Leone police, and then they go back to try and find. Sometimes they can tackle poachers, for example, if they think that they're not armed, and you know, a lot of poachers use snares, so that's often the case. And also spotting mining activities. It's usually around artisanal mining. No large mining companies are working in the forest. They're supported through smartphones, so they're collecting species data and reporting back sightings to the research department. And the main threats, as I said, is logging, poaching, bushmeat hunting. That's usually around duiker, monkey, and small mammals. The mining is very artisanal, but there is a larger threat of mining in Liberia. So, and the coverage of rangers in Liberia is much less because they are actually managed by the government, and there's limited resources. In fact, there's only about 20 that cover an area of 80,000 hectares, so it's very limited. So we're trying to do more to support that in Liberia. But these rangers here are very well trained and do a great job. Next slide, please. So we also, to try and support the rangers, especially in Liberia, we have a network of eco guards. Now these are selected from the communities. They actually go on patrol in Liberia with the rangers. They are also trained in SMART, that's the spatial monitoring and reporting tool. So they can record any species when they spot species and report back again, or any illegal activity, or they spot some snares or anything illegal that's going on. They report it all down in their phone, and it's downloaded into the data management system. They also get training in navigation, surveillance of illegal activities, species identification, and biomonitoring. And we're trying to roll this network out throughout the landscape. We have somebody working very hard with these. The technical advisor works with these eco guards, and they're proving to be very effective deterrent, especially in communities surrounding the forest. But also they provide an employment to foster closer and more positive connection with nature, and alternative livelihoods available for forest communities. We also run, workshops directly with hunters and bushmeat traders to discuss alternative livelihoods. Some of the, and even actually cash. There is a pilot with another organization that's giving cash to traders instead of to try and move them away from trading in bushmeat. But the problem is there's a ready market down in Monrovia, which is about 3 hours away from the forest. So that's the capital of Liberia. But there are various animal protected penalties for killing protected species. And of course, we try to train that and make people aware of what those penalties are. Next slide. So this is the black bee eater. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the conservation enterprise piece. So next slide. So I mentioned them a little bit before, but these are village savings and loan groups, very popular with women in the communities. So it just provides a sort of open, transparent way of saving money within the community. So they form the group. It's, as I said, it's very open. Everything is recorded. There's a structure within the group with a president, a treasurer. Often the treasurer is a woman. But as I say, women are very, they like this program. And sometimes they can loan out money at a small interest rates to small businesses, people who are setting up a stall for selling food. I've seen one that purchased a fridge to have cool drinks. There's another one purchased a generator to run a television to provide some entertainment. But it's mostly around food stalls within markets. They run on a cycle of 8 to 12 months. So then once the money is saved, it's then paid back to everybody at the end of that period. Next slide. So this is the cocoa operation. So what we're doing is trying to have shade cocoa. These are not plantations. These are trees that are grown within the community forest. So part of the community forest, really. We've set up a number of forest-friendly criteria for this. So we try and train farmers to stick to these criteria. Then if they do and are able to, then they can actually be provided with a premium once the cocoa is sold. Because it's also fair trade certified, and we're looking at organic certification as well. So all of these things provide a premium. It's to try and encourage people farmers to stick to the criteria and to sell to us so that they will get this premium at the end of the year. And we've set up different farmer associations within the communities. And they work together as a group of farmers. They collect the cocoa and then sell it to, we have an umbrella organization that buys up the cocoa using a revolving fund. And then the cocoa is actually exported. So this umbrella organization, farmers organization, exports to the US, UK, and EU. And as we say, we've selected certain buyers that will provide this premium to farmers for sticking to these forest-friendly criteria. Other operations is honey production is very popular. So there's a lot of training and provision of equipment, and then help with local markets in particular. But some of the honey is also exported. And ecotourism is something that we're looking at as well. So it's very small. It's usually aimed at people within Sierra Leone and Liberia. But we're trying to improve the conditions and the facilities and the training. We have very good guiders, for example, that take groups through the forest. They are very familiar with bird sounds. They're very good at identification of different birds and mammals and actually trees. We just actually had a group from South Africa, birders, that went to see the Picathartes colony in Gola Forest near a place called Lalahun. Next. So this is the chocolate. We take a small sample of the cocoa from, we buy it from the umbrella organization, the cooperative, and we use it in UK to make this chocolate. So Eat Chocolate, Save a Rainforest, is sold through through shops, the RSPB shops in UK, but you can buy it online. So, and this is, you know, it's, as I said, it's fair trade certified and will get organic certification. Next, please. So this is the African pied hornbill. I just want to talk a little bit about Community Development Fund. Next. So we have a benefit sharing agreements. These are 5-year agreements with each of the chiefdoms. And they're managed through what is called the Gola Community Development Committees, one in each of the chiefdoms. And they decide with community member input what kind of projects they would like to use the money for. So they often do, as you see here, hospitals, schools, supplying hospitals, health centers, training. Sometimes it can be road improvement, a roofing program I've seen, a market stalls place to sell different items, meeting rooms. There's lots of a wide range of different projects that people like to propose, and then they're monitored by GRC as they and helped to develop them. The other parts of the benefit sharing agreements is money towards scholarships, particularly for moving from primary school to secondary school, and so it's a certain amount of money for each chieftain to be able to do that. There's also money that goes to people who have lost land to the protected area, to the national park. So there's land loss compensation. There's support to traditional leaders to help them organize meetings, to promote the project, to talk to communities and see if there's any issues that they have with the project, etc. There's also incentives these are all incentives really to keep trees standing in the community forest. Next, please. So this is just part of the scholarships I mentioned before for the secondary schools. Next. If you could play the video. Again, I didn't mention that water was another very popular to put in a pump like this. This is just a short film just to sort of take you out to see what sort of a village actually looks like. This is from a village in Liberia, actually. Yeah. Okay, next slide. This is the Gola Malimbi. I just want to talk a little bit about research. Next slide. So as you see, this is just trying to give you a sample of what is actually in this area. This 350,000 hectares that we try and manage. So there's 327 bird species. That compares to 574 in the UK, in the total UK. There's 75 terrestrial mammals compared to 28 in the UK. 38 bat species. 600 butterfly species. It's phenomenal, really, when you walk through the forest, the amount of different butterflies compared to 59 in the UK. 56 amphibians and reptiles species, 114 dragonflies and damselflies species. Next. So can you run the video? These are just different camera traps and video traps that we have in the forest. So what we do is we put in a network on a grid system of different camera traps and trying to capture a number of species. What we've been able to do is actually run it through. We have about 40,000 different camera traps photos that has been run through a Microsoft AI program that it actually identifies the different species and where they're seen and what time and when. And so we're getting the results of that now. We also do some eDNA. This is sampling from, it could be from streams and rivers. So this is just collecting, we're working with a group called Nature Metrics, looking at the potential of eDNA from insects as a potential monitoring tool. We have initial results of the pilot study. It's following, so we're getting results on eDNA from fish, amphibians, birds, mammals, reptiles, and we're able to identify these through the when we do the analysis, and also some key IUCN threatened species. So it's an amazing tool just to find out exactly what's out there. We also run dung samples, elephant, pangolins, and monkeys with various research institutes. We work quite closely with different research institutes, and they come and do monitoring in the forest, a number of universities as well. Next slide, please. So we also look at acoustic monitoring. That's obviously to look for different species, to listen for different species. That can be for bird, for any animal, but also we're thinking of using it to sort of identify different illegal wildlife activity, perhaps gunshots or chainsaws, any illegal activity we're trying to use it for, but it's principally mainly used now for identifying different species. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Yeah, so these are some of the samples from the camera traps. The one on the left is pygmy hippo. Next slide, please. This is just where a group of researchers putting out camera traps on grids and pathways through the forest, just to show you what it involves. And sometimes we actually pick up poachers on these. Next slide. So the researchers also, when we're doing a verification, they have to go. There's 600 different tree plots in throughout the forest. So for one verification, we might select randomly 50 and do these kind of measurements. It's measuring trees and how much they've grown over the period in the past year, or it could be 2 or 3 years. And so this all feeds into the calculation of how we arrive at the carbon credits and the number of carbon credits. So these plots are continually measured, and then this feeds into the calculations. Next slide. I just wanted to show you this. For the conditions can be quite difficult in the forest. Obviously, the rainy season, which is just starting now, it's very difficult for rangers and researchers alike. Next slide. This is one of our researchers. This is quite old, but this is common when the rainy season is on. Okay, next slide. So challenges can be opportunities. Carbon projects are highly complex and technical, and capacity across the BirdLife network needs building. It needs a significant resource commitment, sort of kind of upfront money to do these projects, because obviously you have to do the work first and then you get the credits later. To be cost effective, projects need to work at scale and across a landscape, often through new collaborations. The carbon projects are costly and credits are delivered ex post, as I mentioned before. Financing is therefore a significant challenge. The voluntary nature-based solutions markets have either been volatile in or are still in their infancy, although we have seen an uptake recently. And our last verification also took a long time because Vera has so many new projects coming on, and they were swamped. So and it's the same when it comes to trying to find an auditor as well, which are registered through Vera. So there's a lot of more projects around now. The market is picking up, but there's also some criticism about the REDD projects. You may have seen it in some newspapers, such as The Guardian. Many net zero pledges are set in 2030 to 2050, so the window of opportunity is now. If we are to utilize such financing to achieve nature goals, the national and international policy context change. For example, an increasing trend towards national REDD programs and ending project REDDs. So what we have is a project REDD, and actually Sierra Leone is interested in looking towards a national REDD now. So we don't know what that's going to mean for our project. But all in all, I think for me, it's a way of a private sector paying for us to keep trees standing. So to me, I think it is working. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we're trying to scale up. We're looking at developing a REDD in Liberia. So we're trying to use private finance to develop these REDDs. So we've done a pre-feasibility study, and it's been successful. So we're going on now to the feasibility study. So during that, it'll take about 6 to 8 months. We'll find out how much a REDD project in Liberia could generate in terms of carbon sales. And I think it just secures long-term funding and sort of offers the government's finance through taxation, perhaps, and through the systems I outlined before, through the conservation trust funds and saving money for after the project, and actually providing the money to run the forest, to run the protected area. So that's all free to government, and it's offering employment, of course, to the people around the forest as well. So it does offer a lot to governments, but of course there are things that the opportunity cost is to cut down the trees and mine it. Unfortunately, Gola sits on a lot of valuable things like diamonds and gold and iron ore. So we're constantly having to push back and work to persuade the government to keep with the program. And of course, we have to work with forest edge communities, and we're trying to do that through improvement of community forest management. So that's working with communities, maybe identifying a corridor that we would like to preserve in the community areas, or a habitat of a certain species that we would like to protect, and then trying to develop conservation agreements with community conservation agreements for them to protect those areas in exchange for livelihood support and the benefit sharing agreements. So next slide. This is just here to, in Liberia, we work with the Forestry Development Authority and with the BirdLife Partner, the Conservation of Nature, Science Society for the Conservation of Nature in Liberia. Next slide. And that's a thank you. And could you play this is just if you could play the video. So this is just a viewpoint from a place near one of our research centers. You can go up on this platform. It's a rock outcrop actually, and you can see over the forest, and this is what you see. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Richard. That was a fascinating presentation. It seems like you're doing some fantastic work there in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and getting involved in all the aspects of conserving the forest and the people as well, which is so important. So we do have a few questions for you in the Q&A box. If anyone does have questions for Richard, please do put them in the Q&A box. I see there are one or two in the chat, which I'll try and keep track of, but if you can put them rather in the Q&A, that's would be best. Thank you. And before we get onto that, I just want to remind everyone that we will be back in 2 weeks' time. And this time we'll be going to Marion Island, and Anton Wolfart, who is the project manager for the Mouse-Free Marion project, will be sharing the news from that program. So please do join us in 2 weeks' time. Okay, so on to some questions for you, Richard, if that's okay.
Yes.
Penny Abbott asks about the cocoa, asking whether that naturally grows in the forest, or is that something that's been brought in? Where does cocoa come from originally, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were farmers around the forest. It's been there for some time. We didn't bring it in ourselves, and we mainly work with existing trees, and trying to clean around the trees and improve the yield in that way. So they've been there for some time, but they, many years. There must have been a lot more cocoa farming going on, but there are other areas outside of our project area that have sort of plantations and nurseries, and there are a lot of companies buying up cocoa. So it's not, I think it was grown there naturally before, but it's been farmed before for some many years.
Okay, thanks. Another question from Penny, asking, do you have any metrics to show the reduction in illegal logging in the forest over time?
Well, we've been lucky in the protected area. There's practically no logging going on in the forest. Very limited. Yes, we do collect that data, and we do have that data of what we found, because we do transects and different monitoring, and of course the rangers and the researchers that go through the forest. So yes, we do have that data, but I don't have it to hand, I'm afraid.
No, that's fine.
But in the community forest, it's a lot worse. We are seeing an uptick in logging in the community forests. Of course, we don't have control over community forests. They are what they are. They're community forests, so it's the communities that decide. But we try to link cutting down trees. We try to link it with the benefit sharing agreements, so that if you are chopping down trees in the community areas, then you will get less in terms of the benefit sharing money that's available. So we're trying to link that to performance. So that's going through traditional leaders and of course the committees that we have for the different projects. We try to tie that with deforestation.
Right. Okay. That sounds like a good strategy. Sorry, I'm just looking for the next question. So Ria Kotze asks, do you have any programs teaching kids about the importance of protecting the environment? You did mention some education initiatives, but is that,
Actually,
yeah,
yes, we do. In the schools, we have environmental education. So we have people going there to give lessons about the forest, and then we have groups within the communities, just environmental education, not just for kids, but also for adults. So that's part of the program. Actually, I didn't mention, but yes, we do.
that's great. Another question from Penny Abbott, and I thought I'd get this out the way quickly. Well, before we go on to any more questions, just saying, please can you explain REDD again? Just, I guess, what the acronym means and how it, simply how it works.
Okay, so it's called Reducing Emissions from Tropical Deforestation and Degradation. So what we're trying to do is it's as I said on that. I don't know if you need to bring up the slide again, but it's an avoided emissions project. So we measure the trees to see how much carbon is absorbed over time. And so that's calculated through the growth of the trees. And that's why we measure them on an annual basis. And so we can make that calculation of how much carbon has been absorbed. Then we also look at land cover mapping and satellite mapping to see if there's been any loss of trees, coverage of trees. So all of that's going on, and that's part of the calculation as well. But built into this program is obviously the biodiversity side. So we are monitoring biodiversity to see that species are maintaining numbers or increasing. In certain cases, certainly in primates, they are increasing. So that's why we're monitoring all of these things through the camera traps and audio moths and etc. And then there's the livelihood piece, which is part of the program as well, is trying to it's providing livelihood support and income generating activities that will reduce the likelihood of people chopping down trees. So, for example, it's an intensification process, working with crops to intensify agriculture rather than extend it and causing to reduce the slash and burn part of agriculture so that people don't encroach. I mean, we are very successful in people are not chopping down trees in the protected area. The problem is in the community forests, and we need to see how we can tackle that in different ways. As I said, we can link it to the benefit sharing agreements, but we're also trying to link it through, well, environmental education, but also the fact that it will affect the amount of money that we can generate through the project. I don't know if that's clear enough, but
Yeah, I hope so. I can't speak for Penny, but yeah, I think that was a good answer. Thank you. So linked to that, Dieter Hoffman asks, will the project in Sierra Leone be self-financing post-REDD? And what about long-term financing in Liberia?
Post-REDD, I mean, we are, as I say, we are putting money away for that day when the project is closed. So at the moment, there's an endowment fund for about 4 million. We're now going to put more money in there now because we've just done a verification. We have a surplus amount. And then we're doing another verification now, and then one every 2 years. So we hope that we can build that endowment fund to cover costs after the project. But yeah, it's a bit of an unknown, but that's what we're trying to do to save for the future. And in Liberia, we're trying to develop a REDD there too, as I mentioned. We're trying to, in the same way, work with our BirdLife partner and government to develop the REDD. And I think it's looking promising for the Gola Forest National Park, but also for the Foya National Park that I mentioned, and the community forest. So we're building all of this into the REDD project, and I hope we can generate as much. I mean, the markets are looking up, so I think things are only going to get better.
Great. And then George Ledek says, some environmental advocates argue against REDD and other carbon offset schemes. How would you best summarize the counter argument that REDD and carbon offsets invested in conservation, mitigate climate change, and also save biodiversity?
Well, I think that the results of the projects say that. I mean, we are keeping trees standing. There's a huge amount of pressure. I mean, Sierra Leone has cut down the majority of its forests, and yet Gola is still standing. So, and the biodiversity within it is in many ways growing, and I think we are able to control different elements of logging and mining and bushmeat hunting. I think we're successful. As I keep coming back to, the only problem is the community areas, which we need to develop, look at our strategy and see how we can improve that. So the counter argument is, well, the private sector is putting money and buying these carbon credits. You know, they have their own reasons, but some of it is because they want good environmental credentials for their investors. And I think it's the only way at the moment that I see that we have private sector money coming in to save forests. Yeah, so I think we can improve on the methodology, and perhaps that will lead to a reduction in the number of credits that are issued. But I think the value of the credits will go up in time, so it'll balance itself out. Yeah, just I think if we improve the Verra methodology of how they issue these credits, I think that should hopefully answer some of the criticism that has been made against it.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you. Sort of related to that as well, John Horrocks asks or says, thanks for an interesting presentation. And do you know which other national parks are kind of have a carbon credit program or are part of the REDD? I guess I don't know whether he means in the same area or in general, maybe across Africa. I'm not sure.
Actually, Dita might be able to help me here, but I think they're looking at Harapan in Indonesia for a REDD project. As I said, we're hoping to develop one in Liberia. There's some in Ghana that we're also working on. Nigeria's small REDD projects, and I think the Congo and perhaps Colombia is also Cambodia, sorry, is also trying to develop. Yeah, I mean, and East Africa is also looking at REDD projects. So I think it is on the uptake, increase.
Another question from George Ledek, asking, when your project has provided land loss compensation to households that lost land to the national park, has that been in the form of alternative land or as a cash payment or a one-time payment?
It's a cash payment annually.
Okay.
So there's still paid compensation for loss of land. Yes, so I think that's how we do it. In all of the chiefdoms, we've the registered farmers that lost land to the protected areas, and they're given an annual amount each year.
Okay. And then there's a question from one of my colleagues here at BirdLife South Africa, Ntutoka Mate, who asks or says, what a wonderful presentation. And then in simple terms, what are the key important points on winning the community's hearts and to buy in with the vision? And he's working in community areas as well, so I can see his motivation behind asking this question.
Well, I mean, I think Initially, it's employment. All of a majority of staff that work on GRC are from those communities, the forest edge communities, or even or the chiefdoms. The HOG is from one of the head of Gola, the manager of the Gola Forest Rainforest Company is from that area. And also they have a member on the board who is involved in any decision making. So, and then the fact that the benefit sharing agreements are negotiated with them, with people through the committees, and they see that they receive funding directly to them to have their own projects and the various things that I outlined in scholarships and support to traditional leaders. So all of that goes well, but we do also do a lot of PRA work, participatory rural appraisal. So we're sitting down with people to discuss what they want in their village or a group of villages close by, to see what exactly they want and what we can try and provide to them. Not just a blanket support in terms of livelihoods around certain crops, but actually asking what they want, how we can support them, and working closely with them. And then there's a grievance procedure that we have set up. So if there is a problem with any of the community engagement work, then they can complain and we can try and address it. I think that's what I can think of.
So now there's a question from David Letswalo, who's one of our amazing community bird guides in South Africa, asking about poaching and when rangers encounter poachers. You mentioned they don't carry rifles. Have there been any incidents, or do your rangers kind of have a more sort of not hands off, but don't get into confrontations with poachers? I guess in a South African context, poachers here are often, specifically in the context of rhino poaching, are often, well armed and quite dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, in Sierra Leone, there's less guns around, but there are some poachers that come over from Liberia where guns are more available. Mm-hmm. But they're not, they're trained not to tackle. If they see that there's an armed poacher, then they won't engage. They would spot the area. They often these rangers are from the area, and they can identify different people. But so they're not going to engage if anyone's armed. There has been a couple of incidents, in 2017 and 2012, I think, where a ranger was shot, but not killed. But he was obviously badly injured. And so it does happen, but they're trained to assess the situation and not tackle armed poachers. And then if it's possible, they can go back and inform military, and they go on patrol as well in the forest. So then they would follow up in the forest, and also policemen, but it's more difficult to get them out. Mm-hmm. But realistically, we do work quite closely with the South African Army.
Okay.
So South African, Sierra Leone Army.
I was going to say. Yeah. So on that same theme of poaching, and Pat Jennings asks, so you mentioned bushmeat, but are there wildlife trafficking activities that you know of, and what species are targeted, and are your eco guards and rangers able to make a positive impact against these activities?
Yeah, I mean, I think most of it is bushmeat. That's why we try to talk to hunters and to bush traders, especially on the Liberian side and the market down in Monrovia. There are some obviously in Sierra Leone as well, but we had pangolin, but we're not sure exactly if there's a huge trade in the scales of pangolin, but it's because they're also eaten. Yeah, and chimps as well, monkeys. But we're not seeing a huge trade in these animals. There might be some, and there are a number of chimp sanctuaries in Liberia and Sierra Leone, but not a huge amount.
Okay.
Mhm.
We have hit 8 o'clock, but if you're happy just to stay on to answer a couple more questions, that would be great.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks very much. This question is from anonymous, asking about working with local and African researchers. You mentioned you do have quite a bit of research activity. Are they locals from Africa or from elsewhere?
It's a mixture. We work with the local university in Sierra Leone. There's a couple actually. There's one in Kenema and one in Njala. We often work with them to do livelihood surveys, etc. We usually for research, there was in terms of biodiversity, it's usually outside international organizations that are coming to do that. But they also do build capacity when they're here. So we have training for local researchers. Obviously, we have a team and department of researchers, so they work with them. And yeah, so it's varied really. And we're trying to link up with local universities and research institutes. But so it's a mixture.
Okay, great. Handina Gunda asks whether there are any invasive species that are threatening the forest. I know it's a big problem in a lot of parts of the world. Is it a big problem in Gola?
I think maybe perhaps in the community forest, but not really in the protected areas as I see it. I don't see. Yes, we don't. I think I would have to refer that to the research department to perhaps give you a better answer. I could follow up on that if you would like, but I don't think there's many invasive species that are making a huge impact in the forest, and that's plants as well as animals.
That's good to hear. Shashi Kassan asks about what are the kind of most threatened bird species in the forest?
Well, I mean, Picathartes is one that we have. It's the iconic. It's on the album. It's threatened. The Gola Malimbi is another one. There's Timneh parrot. Is threatened. So we're trying to work with that. Gola. Did I mention Gola Malimbi? Yeah, so those are the main ones that we are working with to try and make to monitor to see how our numbers are affected. So we have to, we're in terms of researchers, we're spread pretty thin, so we have to target the ones that are most threatened. But those are the ones we're looking at.
Okay, great. I think we'll just go through 2 more questions. The one is from Joseph, who asks or says, thanks for the good work. Are there specific species of trees that are, capturing more carbon than others? And then goes on to ask, what species would you recommend? I'm not sure if that's for planting where, but I guess that's a tricky question, given that there's quite a lot of local factors.
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and I wish I could answer it, but I don't have that. Unfortunately, I don't have that knowledge. But we were thinking of working with Kew Gardens to try and do a sort of inventory of different trees. We don't have a lot of that information. We focused really on the animals and birds. So I think that's something that's missing. And so if you come back and ask that question, some of the researchers may know that answer, and I can follow up again if you want. I'll try and do that.
Yeah.
But I don't, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks though. Again, then two sort of related questions. So Alan Taylor, you did mention this, but I saw his question pop in before you mentioned it, saying, are there any ecotourism initiative operating at present, and is there potential? And then Shannon says, is Gola geared for visitors? Are there, accommodation and guides, and is it open for visits? I think is the gist of what the question is.
Yes, it's open for visits, and you can go online on the Gola website, Gola Rainforest website. But I have to say the facilities in Sierra Leone, I don't think are to a standard that can for international tourists as yet. But I mean, people do go there, and the people that don't mind to sleep quite in basic accommodation. There are obviously these picathartes and lots of outcrops that you can definitely go and see. There's lots of other birds. And what we're trying to do is, we're trying to develop a project that will now improve the facilities in Sierra Leone. Already in Liberia, we've been working on an area called Elephant Falls at the beginning of the Gola Forest. We've put up some A-frames that are much higher standard, and we're trying to do trails and paths and things like that to various sites. So it's a bit slightly better, that location in Liberia. There's also TY Island, which is part of the landscape, which is it's much better. It's been organized for longer for tourists, and it's quite good because it's a small island that's surrounded really by a river, and so you can see a lot more species in a smaller area. So we're trying to link up those kind of things, like a circuit in TY Island, then you go to Sierra Leone, Gola Rainforest, and see the picathartes. Then you go across to Liberia and go to Elephant Falls, where there's river and waterfalls, etc. Then you could go to a beach location. So we're thinking of how to provide a circuit that would, and we're going to focus a bit more on that in Sierra Leone going forward. But
Yeah,
right now it's pretty.
That sounds promising.
Yeah.
Great. Then I think we will leave it at that. It's now almost 8:10. So thank you very much for staying on to answer everyone's questions. And thank you very much for the amazing presentation and the fantastic work that you and your colleagues are doing in that area.
Great, thank you very much, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, you're welcome, and I'm glad the internet cooperated with us. And yeah, so that's all that remains is for me to thank all our viewers for tuning in. Thank you very much for joining Conservation Conversations, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks very much, and good night.
Good night.